Hi. Hi, and welcome to my podcast, Discourses. Today, I have here Mr. Sheen. Sheen is an electronics and telecommunications engineer. He's the founder and managing director of Glowroad Avionics. Glowroad Avionics is an aviation company based in India. It supplies parts for UAVs, UVs, and small-scale aircrafts. The clients include hobbyists, universities to weather and surveillance companies. Glowroad aims to promote and support the community around aerospace in the local Indian market. And to this end, Mr. Sheen and his team has done numerous workshops, seminars, and consulting services. And so I myself has attended one of his workshops a few years ago, and where he taught me how to craft a glider with my own hands. And so welcome to this episode, Mr. Sheen. So glad to have you.
Thank you, Aki. Thank you.
So ever
Thank you for inviting me to this short interview. I'm very happy that I can spend some time talking to you.
The honor is mine, to be honest, to speak with a person in this industry. So ever since I was a child, I was really into all things airplane related. I remember, as far as I can remember, I used to cut out pictures from magazines and stick it out on the wall, like airplane pictures. So whenever a person comes to my room, I'll be like, this is my airport. Let me introduce you to my airport. I was the kind of person I was. And there was an inclination towards airplane and airports and so on. So I'd like to know more about what made you interested and curious about this industry and airplanes in general.
I think that was sort of something that I always enjoyed as a kid. And just like I as a kid, I loved airplanes. I didn't know where to go and find out about airplanes, because in those days, in the 80s, early 80s, late 70s, when we were all growing up, we didn't have much access to toys the way we have it now. As you go to any shop, you get all kinds of toys. So as a small kid, 2-3 things that always excited me was, of course, electricity and these battery operated toys, and also anything that was mechanical. So that's when my interest grew, playing with toys. And I always loved any toy that would work on batteries. And in those days in India, we would have to wait for someone from abroad to come and give a battery operated toy. And that was wait for 1 year for the vacations. The kids are very impatient, so you can't wait that long. So that was how it was with me. So I remember, when I was around 6.5, 7 years old, I made a small torch with one cell battery. That was my first toy. I used to just sit inside the blanket, cover myself with a blanket, and use the torch and be very happy about the small light that I would find at the end when I play with that torch. So that kind of small experiment, and opening up all the toys, looking at the mechanism inside, this kind of excitement, the hobby of repairing toys which were broken down, that is where my interest in creativity came in. Being creative about the ways in which I can enjoy designing a new toy, or working on something that was non-existent. I wanted all my toys to be alive, working, moving around and all. So that kind of fantasy, that kind of dream was always behind the designing of whatever I would do. So as years passed by, I think I was around 10 years old. A friend of mine, a classmate of mine, he told me about this hobby called aero modeling, where you can make small aircrafts,
Mhm.
and that really brought out uh, the interest in me for aircrafts, because till then I would never speak to anyone saying I want an aeroplane or something, but I would always think of aeroplanes. But after that day, I started, searching for ways in which I can, find aero modeling kits or places where people do this. And
Mm.
that's how, of course, there was no internet. Once in a while, in the newspaper, if you come across an article on aero modeling, that's when you get to know what's happening. So one of the things I got to know is that there was a shop in Calcutta where they would sell these kits.
Mhm.
So then when my father used to go to Calcutta very often as part of his work. So he would get some kits, or when I would get a vacation to go with him, I would
Mhm.
go to that shop and buy aero modeling kits, and that's how my interest in aero modeling came in. So
Okay.
over the years it grew, and then when I was working, I realized how the work environment in companies are, and there was no scope for doing anything creative.
Mm.
Companies have their goals, their targets, and they will work according to that. And that's not a place where you can think of designing something. Of course, there are a lot of companies that do that, but then you can't do what you want to do. You
Mhm.
will always have to do what they want. They
Yeah,
want
you're under
you to
someone,
design,
you're
or
reporting to
yeah,
someone. Yeah.
yeah. It's not about a problem in reporting, but about how long you will have to wait to create your own stuff.
Yeah,
So
true.
that's not an easy thing. You might be doing something almost in line with what you want, but not what you want.
Mhm.
So that's when I thought, okay, aero modeling was something that was already in India, but not well known. Only in the metros, a few groups of people here and there would be doing aero modeling.
Mhm.
And beyond that, no one ever heard about it. So I thought this is something very important, because over the years, as I grew up, I realized children with a lot of creative knowledge, they are unable to express themselves. They don't know to design something or make something merely because they never had that practical experience in life.
Yeah, the
So
opportunity to create something for themselves.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I remember as a kid, one of the things I would always spend time doing was making small tools.
Mm.
If you don't have the right tool, then you cannot make something. So either you buy it or you make it. You create your own.
Okay.
So when you do that, you can use that tool for many things. So uh, I always found that in our country in those days, having access to tools, good tools, was difficult. There were hardly any companies manufacturing.
Mm.
I often was blessed in that sense, because sometimes my uncles, when they would come from abroad, they would bring some tool, and that would help me a lot.
Mhm.
So I realized this was something where we lacked. So one of the ideas that I had was, if I have to get into aero modeling, it should not just be about designing these aircrafts and uh, selling it to people, but also to introduce unique tools, machinery, or equipments
Mm.
that people got to have, so that they can use that to make aircrafts or design aero models. So
Okay.
only then a community will grow. Their skills will come out. Else it's all about, like, if I give you a aero modeling kit, like I'm sure you would remember in the workshop that we did, I gave you some pieces of balsa wood,
Mm.
which you had to shape into the wing or the fuselage of the glider. Now, in that sense, you are sort of limited by the design I gave you.
Yeah. But
So
then,
you had to make that glider according to the design.
Mm.
Probably after a few such workshops, or you spend some hours reading through articles on aircraft designing, you might want to create something on your own, but you cannot because you don't have the tools.
Mm-hmm.
So my idea of getting into this business was not just to give such kits, but also to introduce new tools, accessories, testing equipment, so that children of whatever age, and in this I don't believe there are age limitations. Any child, even if he or she is 3 years old,
Mm-hmm.
can start thinking like a grown-up. We humans are having a mind that has limitless capabilities. So if we start creating an environment, a situation where the human mind, however young or old, gets to use that opportunity to use tools and equipments that can enhance their skills, then they can become more creative.
Yeah, true that.
So,
Like, um, like we'll come back to the remote control market. Like,
we
since you
actually call it
mentioned the
we
radio,
actually call it the radio control aircraft.
radio control. Okay, radio control aircraft. Like, are there a lot of hobbyists and people related to this? Like, people in like my age in India who are like buying these kind of equipment and building their own aircraft. Uh, do you think is there a good market for this? Like here in Europe, one thing I've noticed is that the other day I was practicing archery. I do archery sometimes, and then I saw a drone pass by, and then I like a closer look at it. It seemed to me that it was handmade, and after a few minutes, I saw the person who was playing with the drone, and the person seemed to be like he is testing out the drone he has made on his own. So I waved at him. So there seems to be a market for that here. Like, what do you think
Yes,
about the
yes.
Indian version, like Indian market?
Yes, see, because you mentioned drone, I would just like to tell you something about the relationship between the aero modeling industry and what you see now in the form of quadcopters or drones.
Mm.
Drones, if you see, these are not machines that are designed to fly on their own. In other words, the shape of the drone, the arms that you see, the 4 arms for in case of a quadcopter, or 6 arms in case of an hexacopter, or 8 arms in the case of an octocopter.
Mm.
Now, these are not machines that if if, for example, you throw them off a skyscraper, it'll just fall like a stone.
Yeah.
Whereas an aircraft or a glider, you chuck them from the top of a skyscraper, it will glide through air. It won't fall like a stone. It will glide through air. Now, this is where aerodynamics comes in. Now, the drone industry, the way we know it, it actually came into existence because of the aero modeling industry. How? Because when we in the aero modeling industry build aircrafts, we also have this issue with crashes. These are small aircrafts, but they can also crash either due to design failure or some other technical failure, or merely because of pilot error. Now, after spending weeks and months building an aircraft, when you see it crash, it's heartbreaking, and sometimes it's a big loss in terms of the money you spent on. So what the aero modeling industry did is it developed a small autopilot that could be used in such aircrafts. So these autopilots were of use mostly in case of, say, bad weather conditions, or in case there is a issue with the transmission network. You are unable to reach the aircraft. Your signals aren't received by the receiver in the aircraft, and then the autopilot would take over the control and fly the aircraft and
So
come
that
back.
it doesn't crash.
Yeah.
Don't want your
Yes.
hard work to
Yes.
be on the ground
Yes.
that easily. Yeah.
So that autopilot, or the technology developed for it, was as it is taken and introduced into these quadcopters or what we call drones. Now, so the drone technology initially came from the aero modeling industry. Now, of course, there are a lot of companies designing, developing drones, so then they don't make systems for aircrafts as well. They focus only on drones, quadcopters or hexacopters and such flying models. So the switch over took place probably a decade back, when aero modeling companies or aircraft manufacturers shared or developed their know-how with people who are interested in designing quadcopters, hexacopters, and that's how the present-day drone industry came into being. So when you ask about this drone that people are building, like the one you saw, that is what we see in civil airspace. Mostly youngsters love to see this thing fly from any place. You don't need an airstrip. You can take off and land anywhere. So that is where it gets exciting. You don't need a lot of space. You don't need much equipment, just a transmitter and a quadcopter, and then you can fly and take photographs or do any kind of surveillance. So this is catching up in India. In India, the market is big. Mostly youngsters use quadcopters, while for aircrafts also there is an interest, but it's an industry where you need a lot of skill. If you need to build an aircraft, design an aircraft, it is a lot of work that you need to do. People are either not skilled or have no patience, because you need to be really patient to do that. Otherwise, I find designing an aircraft needs a lot of tools and equipments, preparation. So if you go that way, if you design an aircraft, you'll be actually technically more sound than if you say design a drone, because more like a plug and play device. Most of the parts of a drone you can assemble with little knowledge and go by the instructions that the manufacturer gives you, and then you can have a flying drone. But that's not the case with an aircraft. Aircraft is entirely dependent on the builder.
Okay.
So if you are building it, it is entirely dependent on your skill level, on the kind of tools you use, the kind of design you have made for the aircraft.
Let's talk about that for a second. Like, what kind of workshops do you still do workshops nowadays?
See, even for us, when we started, we didn't plan to do workshops. We were focusing only on manufacturing and also distributing some equipment that were not easily available in India. So over a period of time, some friends and well-wishers, they told us that, since this is not something everyone knows about, so you should take sessions, classes, so that especially young children who really want to do this, and no one is there to teach them, guide them. It will be good, and we felt it is right.
It's kind of like elevating the
obligation
market.
To do. Yes. Yeah. So, but then we did have very good experience teaching children. Especially, I remember in our very first workshop, which we did here in our small factory, there was one kid who had a learning disability, and we didn't know this. His parents dropped him here, and when they dropped him, that's when they told us, he's got this problem. So might be he might not understand what you share in the theory class, but then he loves to do things. Okay. And amazingly, I during that first experience of mine, I realized this kid was finding it difficult to understand some basic physics and maths that we often teach in our workshops. But so I doubted about how he would, build the glider. Now, when we started off with the practical side of the workshop, amazingly, this kid was the fastest among all the kids. In fact, I think he completed his glider in probably 70% of the time, which other kids spent. And after that, he did something. He got up from his chair and he went around helping all the other kids. And that was really touching to see.
Yeah, that opens your eyes.
Yeah. So it made us realize this is not just about being very technical and somehow build something that
there's
flies
different types of intelligence too.
It also brings out the social aspect of people.
Social aspect, yeah, true.
And we took it very serious. And we, over a period of time, there were some agencies, organizations that look after children with learning disabilities. They have approached us for help, and though we could not do much, but we are always open for that also. And I think that's where the importance of practical use of science and mathematics comes up. We've often spent too much time in theories, discussing theory, learning about them, reading about it, solving problems on a sheet of paper. But when we get down to do it and build something out of it, that's when we actually become complete in every sense. And in our society, everyone might not be good in the studies, but then if there are people who can benefit in sharpening their skills, then I think I would suggest aero modeling, not because I do it or I run a business connected with it, but I find this to be very precise. This is one hobby where if you do an error, you will see it in your model. It will not fly, or if it flies, it will crash. So, you can see it with your own eyes about how it works, how it flies. We call it the aircraft characteristics. It depends on the creator, the maker. So the better you are with your theories, you can all the more, make a better aircraft.
Yeah, you can design. So there's a relationship, there's a direct relationship between what you study and what you apply. Like the more connected it is, the better you can fly.
Exactly. So, so it brings out the best in you. And if you're really smart, then you can, use that to develop other products. Now we are dealing with aircrafts. There are boats. I love designing boats, but then I've not gone into that. As a kid, I did it, but I want to do it very professionally. So very soon you might hear that also from us about coming out with boat and ship kits. So what I'm trying to say is, once you develop that skill, then you can move into other products. Like one thing I find very good in Indian engineering colleges is they are always very open to designing four-wheelers, cars.
I've seen that myself.
Yes, so and they always keep a big budget for it. Most colleges, the budget runs into a few lakhs of rupees.
And it's like integrated to the course. So you need to win the competition, participate in the competition to get
Exactly. So in those lines, if you think, most of the kids have no choice but to develop the skill of building it from scratch. So I would say you want to do that, aero modeling is the best way to start off, because here the tools are real. Everything is real, and it's no. That's why if you especially from the US market or European countries, if you import a aircraft kit, you'll find this label on the box. This is not a toy. It looks small, so you might think it's a toy, but the manufacturer makes sure they put this label that this is not a toy. So why do they do that? Because this is an engineering marvel. It is perfect, like the bigger aircrafts that it represents, the scaled down versions. It functions and works exactly like the big ones. So there is no scope for you to assume that it's a toy, it's a real aircraft. So when we deal with such kind of products, it brings in a seriousness, a level of seriousness about how we need to use it, how we need to maintain it, fly it. So it brings in what we call professionalism at a younger age. You don't have to, complete college and join an MNC to live a professional life. Even as a kid, if you do this kind of a hobby, whether it is shipbuilding, boat building, aero modeling, rocketry, there is rocketry, which is another exciting hobby. Each of these hobbies, they are very demanding, and they make you think like a professional.
Okay. Like, what exactly do you learn by doing things on your own hands? Like, you're making a rocket or you're making an airplane. What is the exact thing that you're learning?
My personal experience is this, that suppose, for example, I design an aircraft. Then once the design is ready, then the next thing I think of is how to make it, which means the parts of the aircraft, of course, we use modern technology. We design on a CAD software, and then we have CNC laser cutting machine where we cut 2D patterns of the design and then we assemble. But that's one part of it. There are times where you will come across shapes or parts of the aircraft which cannot be made that easily. And then you will need a special machine or a tool, and then you start designing that. And that's where the excitement is. So when you are building an aircraft or designing an aircraft, you actually don't just build an aircraft. Along with it, you design a set of tools specific to the requirement of building that particular aircraft. So it is a series of things. I built machines merely because I needed to build one part of an aircraft. So then it's another long process, taking some weeks or months to make that one machine. It might be one small thing, and you might think, why do you need to do this? But then I know every aircraft needs this. So then I'll have to make some small alterations, and I can use that machine for that aircraft also. So it's a series of designing and redesigning processes.
Yeah.
And so if you ask me, what do you
learn exactly?
Learn from it? You get to learn how you should avoid certain flaws while you design the next machine or next part that you will be putting for the aircraft or any aircraft that you are going to make in the years to come. So there is a lot of foresight you get, new thoughts, identification of errors, what need to be avoided. You will learn about materials, you need to learn about composites, you learn about adhesives, you learn about metals, how they behave in different stages of production or whatever. So this is even about tools. You might get the best branded tool, and at certain point it fails, and then you realize, oh, this company's tool is meant only for this one thing. What I want to do, if I have to do, then I have to alter it or change it or look for some other product. So you'll keep on learning a lot of things.
True that. So, it's a journey. It's like you're building a skill set where you know the in and out of that airplane.
Yeah.
So it's like
yes. If we say in one sentence, if we can describe it, it will be like this: you learn the limitations of all physical bodies that you get to see and interact with. And their limits, whether in terms of what they can do, or their limits in terms of how long they will survive the work that you're trying to do. So there is a lot that you get to learn. And also when it comes to aero modeling, it's not just one field of engineering that you are making use of. It's not just mechanical, it's not just electrical, it's fluid dynamics. A lot of things come into play. So if you go into telecommunications, there's lots to do in modern day drones. If it's electronics, there's lots to do in If it's programming, then there's lots of programming that you can do in it.
Yeah.
So you name it, every field of engineering comes into use.
It converges. Yeah, it converges to Aero
Yes.
Modeling. You can, there's a lot of,
Yes.
it's kind of like a platform wherein you can like
Exactly.
mix with other kinds of studies.
Yeah. For example, a simple thing like the landing gear, the wheel, the tire that is used in an aircraft. I thought, okay, in my state of Kerala, we have a lot of rubber estates. So obviously there are many rubber companies. So what about designing a wheel? It's not a joke. It was very serious work, and it didn't. We couldn't do it because of certain practical reasons. The companies that we approached, they were, like making big tires and big equipments. For them, making a small wheel or a landing gear for a toy aircraft was
not feasible.
Was a funny idea. Yeah, not feasible. A lot of issues. So they were wondering why they should do this. Finally, it so happened we got in touch with a US company. They've been there in business for, I think, almost 7 decades. And they make good rubber tires, in fact, tubeless tires. So we started using them. So there are companies doing a lot of innovations in this field, and their work, their product speaks for itself, and we benefit in using them. And also there's a lot to understand about what perfection can mean in this hobby. So what I would say is this is one field where if you go, every small thing, however small it is, whether it's a fuel pump or an electric connection, everything matters. We don't compromise on anything. And that is what helps the aircraft fly. So
every little bit matters.
Yeah, every little bit matters.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ingenuity in designing all those little bits. It's like
exactly.
Well, there are also like principles that you shouldn't like mess with in terms of making an aircraft, and then there are like tiny bits you can like design such that it becomes much more efficient, it's much more faster, and so on. So
yes.